Thank you for a hell of a ride. That was awesome. Mics set up in the aisles if you want to line up. We have time for a few questions. Not going to go all night for sure. But just start with Mr. Spielberg. Thank you. And you know what an ambitious, crazy blend of reality and gaming, and it must have been so many challenges.
Let me first say, this is perhaps the greatest anxiety attack I've ever had. And your question?
Well, actually, let's hear more about that. Why particularly nervous? Because, I mean, it's such an unusual blend.
Here's the thing. When I make a movie that I direct behind the camera, and I made a whole bunch of movies, historical films, like The Post and Bridge of Spies, where I directed behind the camera, you know, I kind of, pretty much in control of that. But when I decide to make a movie sitting in the audience with you, and I direct the film in the seat right next to you, that means I'm making the picture for you. And your reaction is everything. Everything. Thank you.
I'll start with Ty, because Ty's been here before, and we've been thrilled to have him in a number of roles, but how exciting was this for you?
How exciting? My whole family's here. They're my parents here, cousins, best friends. No, this is like the best 2 hours of my whole life. Except for the part where the movie stopped and the sound wasn't working. That kind of sucked, but it did kind of build it up, did it not? I'm so thrilled to be here. I mean, I just this is all, it's like a dream. No, I'm over the moon. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
First of all, Mr. Spielberg, I just want to say you were the person who inspired me to become a filmmaker, so thank you for that. My question is for both you and Ernest, what was when you made the connection, for you, what was the moment when you were reading the book and said, hey, I want to make this a movie? For Ernest, what was your first reaction when you got a call and it was like, hey, these are Steven Spielberg's people, can we make your book into a movie?
Well, the thing that, before I read the book, I read the script by Ernest Cline. Ernest did an adaptation of the book, and with Zach Penn, and that was the first thing I ever read. But when I read the book, the scene that made me say completely yes to the film was a 4-page dialogue scene between Parsifal and Artemis. It's the most they ever talk in the book together. And I said, if I can capture that in a bottle, if I can get that and reduce it to a movie length, but get that relationship between Parsifal and Artemis, this will be a movie worth making. Because this is a character movie as well as a big action movie.
Thank you very much.
And well, when they told me that Steven was going to read the screenplay, I got really depressed. Because at first I was really excited, and I was like, well, that's never going to happen. He's going to decide not to do it. And then I'm going to have to spend the whole rest of my life imagining what it would have been like if Steven Spielberg had made Ready Player One. So it was like the longest couple of weeks of my life while he was deciding, while I was rewatching all of his movies and listening to John Williams nonstop, and then I heard he was going to do it, and every day since then has been better than the last. So thank you guys so much for being here.
I'm not normally nervous in front of a microphone except for when Steven Spielberg's on stage. So as a journalist, I'm going to go a little bit from my notes. A comment that leads into my question, especially now in a time when so many of us want to escape from reality and the things that are going on in the world. It is so wonderful and encouraging and thrilling to be in an audience that when a film stops, we all cheer along with the movie as it comes back, because we have the joy of the collaborative play that we had on the playground as kids. The one bit where they're throwing imaginary things to each other when they're in the van immediately conjured that. So my question to each of you is there a favorite toy that was used in the toy box in the movie? You know, whether it was the Gundam, the Mechagodzilla, something in particular that really just tickled you individually, that you loved seeing in film?
Chucky was pretty good. Because I used to be scared of Chucky. I used to not really watch those movies. But now, like, I'm not scared anymore, so it's nice I get to use the thing that used to scare me as a weapon in the movie. In a Steven Spielberg movie, you know what?
Yeah, Godzilla.
I've got to say Chucky as well, especially the bit where we're trying to get him out of the car and we end up punching Chucky in the face before he gets unleashed onto people.
Yeah, I'll probably say Chucky too. I'm just gonna hop on the bandwagon.
Yeah, absolutely Gundam.
The one thing that none of you should talk about, The Shining.
I'm kind of cross between the DeLorean and the Iron Giant. The Iron Giant's like my childhood hero, I gotta give it to him.
And for me, it's Parsifal's DeLorean. You know, that was something that made it all the way from the book into my real life and then into the movie. So that's my favorite.
And to me, it was being able to bring the Iron Giant back to life. And I think the moment that I remember doing with ILM, we were discussing it with ILM, and I, you know, was, and this is also, all this is, please, preserve the secret of the movie, because you're part of our family now, but it's Iron Giant's last film that comes out.
This is a question for Steven Spielberg. This was the third time I worked with Mark Rylance. I was wondering what the process was for directing him on this movie, and if you're going to continue working with him even more.
Well, you know, I'm crazy about Mark Rylance, obviously, because this is the third movie we've made together. And what really led me to this decision to see if Mark would want to do this is he has not lost his childhood. You know, there's a little boy alive and thriving in Mark. And I just thought that there was something both very, very connected with the world and something also a little bit removed, a little bit ethereal about Mark. And that's the way they wrote Halliday. And I just remember saying, you know, to Mark, when I approached him on this, and I said, I'd love you to be in a movie and play two roles. He said, oh, I'd love to play two roles in a film. And I said, well, you get to play yourself and your avatar alter ego. And I remember before I even gave him the script to read, I talked him through the movie, and before he read the script, he signed up to do it.
Really good movie, guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, I love the book, and I'm so excited to hear that a movie was coming out. Could y'all talk about the process of the adaptation? I remember really loving, like, sort of the educational theme that continued on in the movie, that education is this way that we can rise up and be motivated by it. But that first quest was amazing. So, please talk about that.
Thank you. Really total team effort for 3 years on one screenplay, which the reason why so many movies you see are so bad is because directors don't take the writers who they need and who they like and keep them in a team, and that is not the way Steven Spielberg works. He had me and Ernie all the way through. We worked on this together. The storyboard art, there's so many people who worked on this movie who deserve credit for it, but this is like a case study in working on a screenplay to the maximum amount that you can, with everybody bringing their expertise to the table. So that was the process. It was kind of as I say to these guys, they're in their own bubble where, you know, Steven Spielberg bubble where everything works as it should be. And then there's Hollywood outside where everything's totally screwed up. So.
I want to live in that bubble that he creates, where it's just, you feel, you know, when the first time you meet Steven, I think everybody is, they've overthought their wardrobe and they just had a haircut and they're really nervous. And I think he's experienced that so much that when you meet him, he sets you at ease and then immediately starts to make you feel like a collaborator. And I felt, you know, like he was such a fan of my book and invested in making the best adaptation possible. And you know, I had a bad experience with my first movie. I've only made 2 movies, and this is the kind of the worst experience you can have, followed by the best experience you can have. And so I'm so grateful to everyone up here for this movie. It's just wonderful.
I have to throw a number.
Thank
you. You know, my wife she was jogging, and every day when she went out and ran, she listened to the book on tape, and this is not her kind of story. Gaming, she'd never played a video game in her life. Like I said before, you don't have to play a video game to understand the story, but she heard the entire book on tape, and she came back to me after 3 days, and she said, and I already sort of decided to do it, she said, oh, no, there's no decision to be made. You're making this movie.
Thank you, Kate.
Go ahead. Oh, you just made the post and you had an award run at that, and now you're about to release. Sorry, I'm nervous. I'm really nervous. Ready Player One. How hard is it to manage, making these massive projects concurrently and having projects coming in constantly? And also, I've seen Jaws 47 times since I was like 12.
I should have worn my Jaws socks today. I think. I essentially, ever since I was really little, making all kinds of 8mm movies and then graduating to 16 and 35, I never just did one thing at the same time, because I found when I had multiple projects and I would get lost in one, I'd come back to the other one with complete clarity. And my objectivity is the thing that I fear the most losing. The second I become too subjective about something and I get too inside the story and I can't see it anymore, I can't see it from the audience's point of view anymore. So by doing several things at the same time, I get to have a renewal of objectivity. And The Post was a special situation. But I've done other films. I did Jaws and Schindler's List in the same years. Jurassic Park and Schindler's List. At the same time, a little brain freeze there. And that really was the opposite of what I'm telling you. That was a horrible experience because I didn't want to be approving dinosaur shots when I was in Poland telling a story of the Holocaust. So it works and it doesn't work sometimes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
So there were some of us who picked up the book and chose not to eat or sleep until we finished it.
Thank you.
So my question is, were there any elements that you were concerned about for those book purists translating onto film, whether it was casting or there were certain themes, anything that you may have had to omit or include that may translate a little bit differently in film? And so how did you handle that?
That was only a concern for me before Steven Spielberg was attached. Up to that point I was nervous, I felt like I'm not sure how far away. It had moved further away from my book than I was comfortable with, and then Zach brought it a little further back, and then when Steven came on board, Zach called me and told me about this first meeting when Steven came in with like 50-some Post-it notes in the novel of things he wanted put back into the movie that had been taken out. And once I heard that, then I haven't worried a single moment, since then. All of my favorite book-to-film adaptations, like Jaws, have taken huge liberties with the source material and made drastic changes because you have to. They're 2 different mediums with 2 different needs and different strengths. So you always have to rework things, even Tolkien, And so I was at home with that and fine with it and felt comfortable because I was working with people that I trusted. So I feel like there are parts in this parts of the dialogue in this film that are verbatim from the book. And sometimes Steven would even take pictures of the book and send them to different departments or to Zach and say, just do this. And so there are moments that are just translated literally, and I'm so happy about that. But I feel like the changes that we made make it a fun read and interesting and a surprise for fans of the book. Do you feel like you were surprised, but still it
Yes.
captured the spirit of the book, right? Don't you feel like this movie captures the spirit of the book?
Were there any elements?
Sorry, we're actually moving on. This is actually the last question, I hate to say. Go ahead, make it quick.
I'll make it good. We heard everyone's favorite character. Since this is a movie about Easter eggs, there were a ton of them in there. I think the audience noticed different ones. Not everyone noticed everything. What was your favorite little secret throw-in from the past?
Oh, I'm going to kick off. Okay, it's the Thames. No, they can hear me. Just my imagination running away with me. All that
I could come up with some Easter eggs. There are a few million in there for you to find. Some of them, we had ILM doing the special effects inside the Oasis, and then Digital Domain did the real-world special effects. And both, I think, special effects teams hid stuff in the movie that I'm not even sure we're completely aware of. But some of my favorites are the ones that we convinced Steven to make reference to his own movies. I love seeing the T-Rex Rex movie come back. When the orb of Osteobox is pulled out of the box, it's the box from Gremlins that Gizmo was in. Stuff like that. So we have to really convince him for stuff like that, but it warms my heart.
And they didn't ask my permission sometimes. Because I didn't want this to become a vanity album of my 1980s movies. And so, yes, I kept a lot of things out of the films I made in the 80s, but I would be looking, we also, Donald DeLine and Christofaria and we had a great team every single day looking at the effects evolving over a 2-year period. And we made 7 passes on one shot, and it was the last pass where I approved a final. It's hard to go back after you approve a final, where I said, shit, is that a gremlin? Which ILM had snuck in, thinking I wouldn't notice.
Remember, no spoilers. And thank you for one of the most exciting nights we've ever had. Thank you for bringing us.